want to congratulate Jimmy Johnson, Chuck Foreman, and Dennis Erickson on being elected to the Miami Hurricane Ring of Honor. Tremendous honor. Coach retweeted on my Twitter page. He absolutely loves the U. You got to remember something about Jimmy and his success and what a coach and what a player he was. Jimmy was on the national championship Arkansas team, played with Jerry Jones. So Jimmy's got a national championship as a player, as a college coach, and it has a Super Bowl ring. And he's in the College Hall of Fame and he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's had quite a distinguished career. There's very few people that have that. He's won a national title as a player, and he's won a national championship as a college coach, and he's won a Super Bowl ring as a head coach. You would find that impossible to duplicate when you look at some of the coaches that have tried to make that leap to the NFL level. The reason that Jimmy had success on every level is because he had a process and he believed in what they were doing, kind of what we're talking about. He believed in culture. He believed in having the right people in the right place. You know what he also believed in? People knowing their roles. Nobody stepping out of line. There was none of that. And I'll make a point to you guys, and I'll tell you guys a story that a lot of people don't know about Jimmy Johnson and why Don Shula and Dan Marino don't like him. Okay, I'll tell you why. And this is not public. Some of you, I've kind of like broached it a bit. Well, when Jimmy, and think about who Jimmy Johnson took over for. He took over for Tom Landry, and he took over for Don Shula. Try doing that. He's probably the only guy. By the way, he didn't have a losing record at the Dolphins. It just wasn't as successful because there were more people in the way, and the owner didn't want to do what Jerry Jones wanted to do. Wayne Huizenga was not going to do. Get this, Wayne Huizenga was a worse owner than Jerry Jones because Jerry knew Jimmy knew what was best. Wayne didn't want to do it. He played to public opinion. Let me say this to you. Jeffrey Lurie made the right choice too. He had to fire a Super Bowl coach. That must have killed him. He had to fire Andy Reid. That had to kill him. You build up that great relationship with those men like that, and you have to call them into your office. I don't care what those relationships are now, but you still have to fire the guy. Come into the office. You're fired. Those are emotional and enormous decisions that you're making for your franchise. It's win or lose when you make the wrong one, right? You guys see that all the time. You guys see that when there's wrong decision making, right? We're letting you go, right? Yeah, man. And you were Andy Reid. Can you imagine being told that? We're letting you go. What? So Jimmy gets the job at the Miami Dolphins. Wayne Huizenga says, you have total say. Great. First move Jimmy Johnson wants to do is trade Dan Marino. He was going to trade Dan Marino to the Pittsburgh Steelers for multiple draft choices. Had a deal worked out. All cut, 3 first-rounders, 2 twos. It was a Herschel Walker-type deal that would have set the Dolphins on a way where they would have had – look at what he did just without that move. He found the linebacker who just went to the Hall of Fame. He found Jason Taylor in a later round. He was going to trade Dan Marino right away. Marino caught wind of it. Came down, had an argument with Jimmy. I'm not saying you're not. We're not going nowhere with you. We got to run the ball. We have to have play action. You just can't sit back there. You've been here 20 years. There's been one productive season in your time here. He didn't want to hear that. I go, you never developed, Dan, a running attack. Man, Those two guys, if you notice at the retirement, Jimmy Johnson's name was not mentioned or was invited to the retirement of Dan Marino because there was so much animosity. And the animosity, guess where it started? When I was in Dallas, you guys don't know that. I'm glad I could tell some of you guys this. Wayne killed it. I'm going to tell you, wait. So when Jimmy Johnson got to the Dallas Cowboys, you know what the worst hire was? Because he was friends with Don Shula. Don came to Jimmy and went like this. Look it up. Look it up. Jimmy's first year. You know who the offensive coordinator was? David Shula. He was terrible. I don't know if a coach has ever had more of an opportunity to be a head coach in the NFL than David Shula. I mean, he had like 50 some odd losses as a head. I think he was 12-51 or some shit in Cincinnati. He was terrible. He ended up running the Shula Steakhouse. I love David as a businessman. He's good. Jimmy goes, the worst mistake I ever made. Calls him in. Soon as the season's over, the 1-15 year, calls David Shula in and goes, get the you know what out. You're fired. Man, that sent shit waves to Don Shula. You don't do that to his kid. Completely embarrassed him. And that set it up. So when Wayne brought him in, Don hated Jimmy. And that's why Jimmy didn't have any of the veteran guys coming around, because the veteran guys were all Shula guys. And they were talking shit on Jimmy the whole time. There was a divide in that locker room in Miami because Dan Marino was a shitty teammate. This guy's worse than Donovan McNabb. Dan Marino's a terrible teammate. Oh, wait, I'll take that back. He is the worst player to coach. I'll take the teammate thing back because I know guys that love playing with him. Okay? Hardest guy to coach, Jimmy said. Just didn't want to hear anything. Thought he knew it all. Thought he knew. He didn't know. He never won but 1 year. So Jimmy puts his deal together. Three first rounders, 2 twos, and get this, 3 thirds for Dan Marino. Marino was like 35. I mean, you make that move with all those picks. Look at what the Jets got for a 39-year-old Aaron Rodgers. You make that move. So he runs up to his dad and goes, Jimmy Johnson wants to trade me to Pittsburgh. Dan's from Pittsburgh. Played his football at Penn Hills. No way. Huizinga comes down, and Jimmy goes, I need you to sign off on this trade. He goes, no. Here lies the difference in building a championship. Howie would have signed that because he would have trusted. Or Jeffrey Lurie would have signed that because he would have trusted Howie. Jerry Jones trusted Jimmy when they traded Herschel. And the rest is history. Right there, there's the difference in championship decisions and why you have to have a really good guy in the building that you trust. It is about trust. Don't you agree? If Howie Roseman had put that deal on trading Marino for all that draft equity, Jeffrey Lurie would have signed it. He wouldn't have looked at what was best for the public opinion for you guys. He would have looked at what's best. That's why they fired Doug. It wasn't, the owner knew that he was going to take backlash from everybody in the community for firing Doug. But at the end, it empowered Howie. Firing Doug empowered Howie to do what he's doing now. And there lies championship decisions. That's how you do it. Right there. That, to me, shows you the difference, again, between winning and losing. And Jerry's problem right now comes back down to, um, well, he thought he could replace Jimmy. I wonder. Hey, let me ask you this: you think Howie's better than Joe Banner? You think Howie's better than Joe Banner as a general manager? This is kind of Joe Banner's kind of culture. He was kind of the architect around it. I think Tannenbaum had a little bit, right? Was Tannenbaum in the building for a year or two? Am I right? Why do I see the name Tannenbaum somewhere in the executive branch with the Eagles for something? Was Tannenbaum in there? I know he was in Miami, but was Tannenbaum somewhere in there? I thought he was like a bridge before, or maybe he worked with Chip. I thought he was in that building somewhere when it came to being like a general manager or something. Howie still has work to do? Yes, he does. And I still think that they're going to scour. Okay. I think they're going to scour as they get closer to training camp. They're going to look at some of the rosters because they do need a back. I'll tell you what, I don't even know if they have enough linebackers to go to training camp. No Tannenbaum? Okay. My mistake. I thought for some reason he was involved somewhere in management somewhere over the last 8 years somewhere. I could have swore he was in there, but okay. All right. So he's been great over the last 5 years. So you think he's been better than Joe Banner? I think he has too. Their drafts have definitely improved. Okay? Their drafts have definitely improved. All right, real quick before I get on to the disrespect match. Boy, I'll tell you something. I do think a lot of people are respecting what this roster looks like, but I do think sometimes they don't respect who's on the roster. Okay? I don't. But how do you feel about the organization and the Eagles putting a lot of faith in the cultures of Georgia and Alabama? What do you make of that? There's a lot of faith because they're taking a lot of players from those two programs, and they're singling out those two programs. How do you feel about them really gambling on Bama and Georgia? A lot of draft choices, and not just draft choices, high draft choices, big time draft choices, gambles in some aspects. Okay? Guys like it, huh? Let's look at that just for, how about this? Not much of a gamble? Okay, well, let's take a look at that for a second. Not much of a gamble. And I've pointed this out to you before. Who's the biggest Georgia star in the last 7 years? Roquan Smith? Okay, let me do Bama. Let me do Bama now. Patrick Surtain, Judy, Devontae, Waddle, how about defense? Bama defense. Where are all these superstar NFL guys? Nick Chubb? Where are all these superstar NFL guys from Georgia and Alabama? Derrick Henry? He's definitely a Saban guy. Zach Thomas was a 5th rounder, and he's a Hall of Famer. Jason Taylor was a 3rd rounder, and he's a Hall of Famer. Todd Gurley, was he there for Kirby? I don't know if he was there for Kirby. Maybe. What I'm saying to you is that, I don't know, man. Those programs really produce the best players in the league? Do they? It's a pretty big gamble. Now, to what Yale said, here's what they're gambling on. They're getting the best coaching. They're getting the best training. They're getting the best head coaching. And they're getting the best preparation when it comes to playing in football games. That is what they're investing in. They're the top here. Here's what you get from Alabama and from Georgia. This is what you get when you draft one of these kids. You know they're going to be one of the top high school prospects that were coming out of high school. They were one of the most recruited kids in the country and could have went anywhere they wanted. You know when you go to Georgia or Alabama, you're getting the very best top flight assistant coaches. And in some aspects, you're going to be coached by people like Steve Sarkisian, Bill O'Brien, Mario Cristobal, Jeff Stoutland. You're going to be coached by some of the greatest coaches in the sport. So you're going to know technique, you're going to know all that, and you're going to be given the best opportunity to be an NFL football player at those programs. You know the preparation from the head coach. There's going to be an environment to winning and consistently winning and being repetitively, consistently winning. And those coaches set that environment. Yes, I think that's all important and part of the evaluating of Jalen Carter, Nakobe Dean. And you see, here's the thing that I have no questions about. Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Ringo, any of the guys from Bama, anybody. Do you know why I don't have any question marks? Here's the question marks I don't have. I have no question marks on their preparation. I have no question marks on their desire to want to be great. I have no question marks on their desire to have been coached by some of the best coaches on the planet and are getting it now. This is just going to come down. And again, I don't think the Eagles are wrong for doing this. That's why you don't go to North Dakota State. I am never going to recruit a kid on pure talent like Anthony Richardson or Trey Lance. That's not happening. I'm not doing that. Those guys weren't coached well. Those guys weren't some of the top kids in the country. Those kids didn't play against the best competition. Those kids weren't prepared to be great. They were just athletes. Now, do some of those guys end up becoming, like, get this. Look at Michael Vick. Here's a great example, too, about Josh Allen. You think Michael Vick was coached great by Beamer at Virginia Tech? Didn't he say that the best coaching he ever got was when he got to the NFL and Andy Reid got a hold of him? It was the first time he learned how to read defenses. He was 10 years into his career. Can you imagine if Michael Vick learned how to read defenses early in his career? He'd probably be in Canton. Okay? Look at Josh Allen. Josh Allen had one recruiting trip and one letter from Wyoming. Shittiest coaching in high school, had to beg schools to look at him. One did, Wyoming. Josh Allen is better now because he had Brian Dable. That was the reason he got better, was because of the coaching he got at the Bills, not at Wyoming. Look at Jalen Hurts. Why do you think Jalen Hurts is where he is right now? You think it's because of coaching? I don't. I don't think the coaches have anything to do with where he is right now, except for this. And I'll tell you, I think it's a different way of coaching. when it comes to Jalen Hurts. I'm not going to coach Jalen Hurts. I'm going to manage Jalen Hurts. And I think that's what the Eagles have figured out, how to manage it. You've got to have so much faith in the way he approaches the game And those RPOs, Arthur, I don't think it's coachable. I think it's trust. Maybe that's part of coachable. But that's why when Nick says he's the most coachable guy, because they're not coaching him, they're giving him suggestions. Because that RPO offense is completely and 100% different from John Gruden's spread offense. It is not anything near Andy Reid. It's not anything near the Joe Burrow offense. You have got to set that guy on a path where you're doing this. That's why Brian Johnson, you know how he could become a problem? If Brian Johnson starts to suggest something in the middle of the game, I'm not you know what? My question would be this: when Jalen Hurts comes over to the side and we're sitting there on the bench and we're in between series, if I'm Brian Johnson, I'm going to go, what do you see? And I'm going to have Mariota sitting next to him. What do you see? And maybe the influence of saying, hey, the wide side of the field, they're not really setting the edge that much. You don't tell them what to do. You suggest that this is what we're seeing. Are you seeing that too? Because look at the responsibility that he has, okay, when it comes to running that style offense. That's a lot of he's got a ton of responsibility. Brady has no responsibility in the run game. Kevin, what quarterback would have gotten if the trade for what quarterback would they have gotten? I don't know. They may have drafted somebody that year. Oh, I know, Kevin. I forgot. Troy Aikman was coming out of retirement for Jimmy. That's what it was. Oh, I forgot that tidbit. Google it. Troy almost came out of retirement for Jimmy. That's what was going to happen. Aikman was going to be the quarterback of the Miami Dolphins. I'm sorry I forgot that little nugget in there. Okay? I forgot that nugget. Okay? Hey, Yale. I'm sorry, man. I forgot that nugget. Yeah, Aikman was going to be he was going to be the quarterback of the Dolphins. Google it. You'll see. He almost came out of retirement. And I believe so did Chris Carter almost come out of retirement. I completely almost forgot. Blaming failure on others is what losers do. I don't know what the heck's going on all day. That's okay. So Jalen, again, good stuff, man. All right. I'm telling you, I think CBS hates the Eagles. I think CBS hates the Eagles. JM goes, Troy wouldn't do anything behind that line with those weapons. His release time was 3 times as slow as Marino's, and yet he's got 3 times the amount of Super Bowl rings. And JM, you make it sound like that Cowboy line was spectacular. Emmett made it spectacular. That's why Jimmy wanted to have the ability to get a great back in there. You guys are crazy. Every single one of those players, except for one guy, Mark Stebnowski, was in Dallas the last 3 years of Tom Landry's career. He didn't do anything with it. They won 3 games. It was Tom Landry for 3 years couldn't do anything with that O-line. Why, JM? If it was so dominant and so great. Martune was there. Martune was already in Dallas 5 years. Nate was in there already 6. Crawford was there 4. Kevin Gogan was there already 3 years. You're going to have to help me here. Why didn't Landry do anything with that O-line for 4 years at the end? All those guys were in Dallas for 4 years before Jimmy showed up. Why weren't they that good? Oh, and by the way, they were 1-15 with that same O-line. They were 1-15 until Emmett showed up. Okay? They were 1-15. Emmett shows up. JM had changed the room. It was Emmett. I heard Sills is coming to Philly this season once a week at Hooters. True? No comment. Hey, by the way, Joe Krause, I promised you, forget it. I promise. I promise. I've made an oath to Joe Krause that I'm yeah. Okay. I've made a promise. So I told him I'd have to give my left foot and I'd have to eat my left foot on my show if I say anything. So I have to let's just say we got great things working. I'll leave it there. And he knows it's killing me too. He knows it's killing me. I got it. Yeah. Okay. Hey, 85. Okay, dog. You're right. Then don't show up. Anyone who shows up, we're going to sit down and have some beers and some things. If it happens. Big Sills ever get to do Rogan? Been working on it. He's trying to find some time. Arthur, working on it. I thought that interview today, by the way, with JFK Jr. was spectacular. He's really a great interviewer, man. Thank you, Jameson. I appreciate it. All right.